the meeting. Hello, welcome to the meeting of the Park and Recreation Commission on September 15th, 2022. It is 6:03 and I invite Becky to call the roll.
You're muted.
Muted.
Audio
Still can't hear you, Becky.
still not working. I can call the roll and Becky while you're troubleshooting, if that's okay. Commissioner Corrales,
Here.
I am here. Gutierrez,
Here.
Machado,
Here.
and now Sandoval.
Here.
Thank you. Becky, are you able to unmute? Okay, can you please, do we have any public? We do?
Yes, so I'll go ahead and read here. Good evening, everyone. Viewers are welcome to provide public comment online through Zoom or by telephone. If you are watching this meeting through Zoom, please select the participants button and select raise hand if you wish to speak. If you are participating by phone and wish to speak, please press *9. When it is your turn to speak, you will be notified by the host inviting you to participate. You will need to press *6 to unmute yourself. Once you are unmuted, you will have 3 minutes to provide your comments.
Okay. Has everyone had a chance to review the agenda? Are there any amendments to this evening's agenda that we need to talk about? Okay. Seeing no amendments, I'm going to go ahead and call for the first agenda item, which is to approve the regular meeting minutes from August 2nd. It should have been in your agenda packet.
You want a motion, Chair?
Sure.
I move to approve the minutes from the last meeting.
I'll second.
All right. Commissioner Corrales,
Yes.
Chair Emerson,
Yes.
Commissioner Gutierrez,
Yes.
Commissioner Machado,
Yes.
and Commissioner Sandoval.
Yes.
All right. Minutes approved. Thank you.
Thank you. So we'll move on to the next agenda item, which is public comment from things that aren't on the agenda. If something is on the agenda, please wait till that agenda item that there will be public comment. So I'm going to go on ahead and let Becky see if there's any people who need to public comment.
Yeah, if you are watching this meeting through Zoom, please select the participants button and select raise hand if you wish to speak. When it is your turn to speak, you will be notified by the host inviting you to participate. Once you are unmuted, you will have 3 minutes to provide your comments. And we do have one attendee, and I do not see a raised hand at this time. Looks like you're muted, Chair. Are you stuck? Let me see here.
Okay, thanks, Becky. So now we're on to the third agenda item, which is the awards, recognitions, announcements. Presentations. So is there any announcements or announcements, introductions, anything that we have I see we have our consultants here for the master plan. Is there any announcements that anyone wants to make, staff or commissioners?
I think the only thing on the agenda tonight is the Park and Recreation Master Plan update number 2 for the Park and Recreation Commission.
Great. So let's go ahead and staff can reintroduce the consultants, and then we can get an update. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, so I'm happy to bring back Lauren Ivy Thomas and Barbara Lundberg, both from RHAA, who are our primary consultants on our Parks and Recreation Master Plan process. I'll just turn it right over to them.
All right, thank you, Catherine. Barbara, did you want to say anything before I go?
No, just to thank everyone for showing up and letting us give our presentation.
Awesome. All right. Okay, so, for those of you who I haven't met, which I think might just be Commissioner Machado, I'm Lauren Ivy Thomas. I'm the project manager for this master plan. I'm a landscape architect and AICP certified planner. So I really like parks and I really like recreation. So I'm just going to go into our presentation. Sound good, Catherine? Okay. Make it full screen for everyone. Okay, so this presentation is pretty similar to the presentations that were given the last couple of weeks. We had our third steering committee meeting last week, as well as our second public meeting. So this is very similar information, and following the information that I'll give you kind of an update of where we are in the Park and Recreation Master Plan. I'm going to go through some of the feedback that we received on this presentation from the steering committee, as well as from the public meeting that we were able to have. So quick outline of the materials that we're going to talk about is a review of the needs assessment. The needs assessment is essentially where we stand and our park and recreation assessment of the city of San Rafael's park and recreation services, both physical and programmatic. And then we'll move into our recommendation prioritization. So as we are developing recommendations for this master plan, we need to create a systematic approach with which to prioritize those recommendations. And so we've created a list of prioritization criteria that we will go through with you, and that's kind of the brunt of this presentation, is to get feedback on that. Then I'll present the feedback that we received from community steering committee, as well as the public meeting on these prioritization criteria. And then finally, we'll have questions and discussion, and then also next steps. Something that has worked really well as we've done this presentation the last 2 weeks is that after I review the needs assessment, I will provide an opportunity for you guys to ask any questions or any comments. All the information is available publicly online at this point, but we can have a brief conversation to clarify before we go into these criteria, recommendation prioritization. Okay, so reviewing the needs assessment is our whole review of the city's recreation services. The review incorporates the work not only of RHAA, or landscape architects and planners, but our extensive sub-consultant team, which includes architects, recreation assessors, recreation planners, as well as CASP, accessibility experts too. So beginning with our needs assessments, kind of again, the review of the master plan to date. We'll start with a quick summary of our community outreach. As you know, we conducted a statistically valid survey from March 7th to March 10th, collected 559 in English, 16 in Spanish, with a total of 575 responses. The statistically valid survey is unique in that those that were targeted are those that statistically represent a sampling of the San Rafael demographic of the San Rafael community. We also conducted a Parks and Recreation questionnaire, which was available from March 30th to May 31st, with a total of nearly 1,100 responses. The main difference between these two survey tools is that one, anyone could opt into, which was the Parks and Recreation questionnaire, while the statistically valid survey used a statistically valid sample. So those respondees were targeted. The only limitation for the Park and Recreation questionnaire was just the number of times you could take it from a computer. So it was really anyone who was interested in this master plan process could provide input. We as consultants have found that using these two survey tools is very commonplace. We have found that it provides substantial results that support each other. So it's pretty typical these days to conduct 2 different types of survey tools when doing this level of master planning. We also completed workshop number 1. As you know, we conducted workshop number 1 a total of 4 times. On March 30th, we held it in person at the San Rafael Community Center. On April 28th, we held it in person at the Terra Linda Community Center over here. On May 5th, we did an online version of the presentation for anybody who was able to join us online. And then on May 11th, we did an in-person version of the presentation at the Albert J. Borough Community Center. The intentions of this first community workshop were to not only introduce the master planning process, what are the implications of master plan, what are the goals of the master plan, but also to introduce the consultant team and to start gathering initial input on how community members are feeling about the city's current existing supply of recreation amenities and services. So the questions that we asked at these meetings are, what do you like? What improvements do you like to see? And if there's anything else that you think should be added to the city's supply of recreation amenities. Our findings, these findings are largely from combining the statistically valid survey results as well as the questionnaire results, but also with input. This input was further supported from the community workshop that we held 4 times. Overall, we have found that there is satisfaction with the city's existing supply of and access to park and recreation facilities. Although there are a substantial amount of survey respondents or questionnaire respondents who are not aware of the city's programmatic offerings. Programmatic offerings refer to courses such as language courses or arts courses that are offered by the city's recreation department. We have found that there's a strong desire to update and improve the city's existing park amenities, especially in modernizing playgrounds and recreation amenities such as benches and picnic tables. We've seen that there's a strong desire for improved maintenance and cleanliness overall of the city's parks. And we've seen that walking is a priority for our survey respondents, being able to have accessible paths of travel without needing to use a vehicle. And finally, we've seen great support for self-directed recreational activities in our community outreach and survey findings. These I'm going to go through kind of the most frequently visited parks as well as recreation facilities. I do want to note we have an asterisk here because compared to the 2 different survey tools, the order of parks and facilities may vary between the statistically valid survey and the park and recreation questionnaire, but the top sites remain the same. So just please understand that there may be slight variance in the order, but we are very confident that these are the top sites. So the most frequented parks in terms of popularity are Gerstle Park, Sun Valley Park, Terra Linda Park, Peacock Gap Park, and Albert Park. And sorry, I should clarify, it's not just most popular, but the most frequently visited parks. The most frequently visited recreation facilities in order of popularity include Terra Linda Community Center and Pool House, San Rafael Community Center. And after that, none. We do think it is significant to point out that following visiting San Rafael Community Center, survey respondents majority replied none before responding to then going to Albert J. Borough Community Center and finally Falkirk Cultural Center. We conducted an extensive document review. The draft document review is available online for public review. The document review stands as our intention to align this master plan with previous planning work. Like I've said, we don't want to reinvent the wheel. We want to be in alignment with the extensive planning work that has already been conducted with the city. So the main documents that we combed through to look for existing policies or recommendations were the San Rafael General Plan 2040, the Downtown Precise Plan 2021, the Climate Change Action Plan in 2019, the 2018 San Rafael Bike and Ped Master Plan, and finally the 2009 Canal Front Conceptual Design Plan and Guidelines. It's important to know that for this master plan, we are relying heavily on the research and information that's been provided in the San Rafael General Plan 2021, especially because this is an extensive planning document that provides really useful information regarding future population projections, existing demographics, demographic projections, as well as just a very healthy state of this, healthy definition of the current state of the San Rafael kind of community. And again, that draft document review is available online for anyone who wants to peruse it. Sorry, we also conducted our parks inventory as well as our facilities inventory. So this is information that was provided to you at the last Parks and Recreation Commission meeting, but now this online, we have the actual park inventory available, so you can peruse it and look through each park and kind of find their existing conditions. But the high level elements to really understand for the city of San Rafael is that the majority of the parks were built in the mid 20th century, making them 60 to 70 years old. This is very typical for a California community. That is the age of San Rafael. What is very unique about the San Rafael Park and Recreation System is that there are 3 parks originally built in the 19th century, close to 100 years, if not older. This is incredibly unique for a California community. And it's a unique experience that the city has absorbed these unique and historic properties into their own recreation supply. The high level needs that we know that the city has when it comes to parks is a need for updated playground amenities per code and accessibility. Playgrounds, just like any physical amenity, do have a shelf life. Playgrounds typically last 10 to 15 years. And within that following that 10 to 15 year lifespan, they need to have repairs. They need to be assessed for being in alignment with current code. So updating the city's playgrounds may be a priority for this community. We've also seen a need for renovated sport courts. There is a variety of sport courts that the city has that are currently not open to the public. So the potential to reopen those or repurpose those may be a recommendation from this master plan. We also see a general need for improved signage, unifying signage between city parks and connectivity between city parks and facilities, as well as general need for infrastructure repairs and replacement. As I stated earlier, many of the city's parks were built between 60 and 70 years ago, which means that the infrastructure that was built with them is from that same time period. The infrastructure meaning irrigation lines, lighting system, electrical systems, those are also 60 to 70 years old, requiring extensive attention. We worked with MAC 5, David Ross, an architect, a San Rafael architect, who conducted the facilities inventory. So while RHA looked at the physical park spaces, MAC 5 looked at the physical architectural spaces, the community centers. The 4 community centers that were assessed were the Albert J. Bora Community Center, Falkirk, Terra Linda, and San Rafael Community Center. These facilities vary greatly from one another, not only in their construction type and physical appearance, but also in the recreation that they provide for the community or how the city is able to utilize them for recreation. Common issues that have been identified in the city's facility inventory is water intrusion, aging mechanical equipment, outdated electrical distribution, a need for door and window replacement, especially for energy efficiency, repair of movable partitions, a need for new paint and finishes, and replacing exterior wood decks. Another sub-consultant on this master plan is Steve Hall, who is also a local architect who specializes in accessibility. The city conducted its first ever accessibility report. So that's what CASP stands for, Certified Accessibility Specialist Assessment, where all the parks were assessed for ADA accessibility. We did categorize the barriers as high impact through low impact, which I'll go into later. But it is important to note that we have noticed a range of accessibility barriers at the city's existing park supply. We've identified major accessibility barriers at Beach Park, the Freitas Park Annex, and Oliver Hartzell Park. Minor accessibility needs have been identified at Albert Park and Stadium, the Canal Community Garden, Freitas Park, those are Cheetos, Pickleweed, and Sun Valley. And then here on the right, you can see that these are parks that have minor accessibility needs, where those accessibility barriers can be removed with improved maintenance practices by the city. So this accessibility assessment is also going to be folded into our recommendations so that we can alleviate barriers of all kinds. In addition to kind of the physical assessments that we've done, so that is RHAA's assessment of the parks and recreation of parks, that is MAC 5's assessment of the recreation facilities, that is the CASP assessment of the accessibility barriers. We also have conducted a recreation assessment with a recreational planner, Ken Ballard of Ballard King. So he has looked at how the city's library and recreation department operates, where there could be opportunities for improvement, where things are going really well, to kind of to just see how this department is functioning. The challenges that have been identified in this recreation assessment are that there are a variety of aging facilities with limited space, limited parking, limited sports fields, and limited joint use agreements. Currently, the city does not have any formal agreements with local school districts to share spaces or facilities. We've also identified that there could be potential for better program growth or better long-range program planning when it comes to recreation programs. The deferred maintenance that we've identified in both the parks and the recreation facilities does actually impact the program opportunities that the city can provide. With aging facilities that need to address deferred maintenance, there's actually limited opportunity and physical space for program opportunities. This also applies to sports fields. You guys are very well aware that Pickleweed is currently the only soccer field used for formal soccer, and it is closed for several months of the year for repair and maintenance. We've also identified that perhaps there could be a better asset management planning or a system to track life cycle costs. As I mentioned earlier, all physical amenities in parks, whether that's benches, picnic tables, or playgrounds, they do have a shelf life. So a potential recommendation from this master plan is to create a system or a strategy to better track the life cycle of amenities throughout the parks so that maintenance can be planned for, as well as the financial implications of those maintenance activities over time. And then, of course, as many industries and many organizations have felt, especially due to the pandemic, limited staffing and limited funding will affect the provision of recreational services and has affected the provision of recreation services within the Library and Recreation Department of San Rafael. Okay, so before I go into kind of the next meaty part of this presentation, are there any questions on the needs assessment or questions on the documents that have been provided publicly online? I'm happy to clarify any questions that might come up at this point. Okay.
Looks like Ariel has a question.
Hey, I'm just curious, and you don't have to spend more than half a minute on this, but what kind of, were you surprised with any of the things that came up, or does it tend to be pretty standard when you're doing this work? Were there any things that were like really surprising and it sort of stood out?
That's a great question. For me, I can say what stands out or what has stood out are the city's historic resources that have been folded into the city's recreation supply, specifically with those 3 facilities that I mentioned that are over 100 years old. So that is Gerstle Park, Boyd Park, and Falkirk Cultural Grounds. I have yet to encounter working with a California community that has had such extensive and actually positive relationships with these historic amenities. And I think it's very impressive that the city has been able to fold these amenities into their recreation network. Of course, it comes with a lot of other interesting challenges because then the city's responsible for managing amenities that are at such an age. Barbara, please go ahead.
I just was going to say one thing that surprised me is that pickleball was not rated as highly as it has been in our other Parks and Rec master plans for other communities. And that really kind of surprised me because that, in terms of emerging trends, pickleball all throughout the nation has become a very, very popular recreation activity.
Thank you, Barbara.
Thank you.
I think we're just early on the curve on that one. I have a lot of friends who are just starting to figure out that pickleball is fun. So I suspect that's coming.
Right. Excellent. But no, I think a lot of the challenges that have been identified in San Rafael are very, very common when it comes to providing public recreation in communities. So nothing wild. Any other questions? Okay, well, I'll keep going with the presentation. So it's important that before the master plan make recommendations, we want everyone, the community, our stakeholders, the steering committee, the Parks and Recreation Commission, to have buy-in on the way in which these recommendations will be prioritized. And so I think even as we were developing these criteria, even we went back and forth, like, shouldn't we have the recommendation before we prioritize it? And we have started internally developing some recommendations, but we really realized that we wanted to have the system in place, the strategy in place with which these recommendations are going to compare and relate to each other before we kind of unleash all of the recommendations out. So here we go. So these are our prioritization criteria. And in this graphic is meant to show how they point-wise relate to one another. There's a slide or several slides for each of these prioritization criteria that I'll go through, but this is an excellent slide that you can instantly see how they relate to one another. At the top, we have health and safety. Health and safety is an obligation that the city needs to provide for community members, and therefore making spaces safe and continuing to keep them safe is a big priority. Following that, we have community priorities. These are community priorities that we have identified specifically in this master plan project. So community priorities that we've collected through the 2 survey tools that we've utilized, as well as the community input we've collected from emails coming into the recreation department, as well as voices that we've heard at the community workshops. Equal to that, we're weighting service area. Service area in this strategy, we are actually, it's kind of 2-pronged. Service area, we are relating to both the most frequently visited park and recreation facilities based on our surveying, as well as allowable densities. So that way we're hoping to capture future development, future growths, while also identifying these are places that people are valuing now and wanting to go to now. Following those 2, we have alignment with general plan guiding principles. We see the 2040 general plan as a key document guiding this master plan, especially because it was done so recently. It's actually been excellent for me to work with a general plan that is so new. I have had a variety of other park and recreation master plans where I'm referring to a general plan that might be 10 or even 20 years old. So it's been really a pleasure to work with a very current general plan to inform our own process. In alignment with this, we have accessibility. Accessibility in this context relates explicitly to the CASP report that was conducted by our CASP expert, Stephen Hall, and how recommendations can alleviate accessibility barriers. And then finally, we have operational efficiency and inclusion in previous planning. So operational efficiency means, will this recommendation help the city operate at a more efficient and better way? Is this recommendation going to support maintenance staff? Is it going to support maintenance dollars? And then included in previous planning is those main documents that we've reviewed that I mentioned earlier. Many of those documents have explicit goals and recommendations that have been stated. And we do find value that if a recommendation has been stated previously before, there was an assessment for that recommendation, and we want to fold that into this master planning process. Okay, so we'll start with health and safety. So we envision health and safety as being kind of the heaviest point value. Health and safety is defined in 3 areas. Public health, specifically referring to sanitation. This may relate to the cleanliness or the frequency of cleanliness of public restrooms in the city's parks and recreation facilities. Physical safety, this relates to whether an amenity is reaching the end of its service life and addressing amenities before they reach that end of service life and preventing potential physical hazards to park users or facility users. And then finally, urgency. Addressing this will prevent amenity closure. At the end of the day, a main goal of this master plan is to prevent amenity closure And unfortunately, we have already seen amenities closed in the city of San Rafael, specifically the tennis courts. So avoiding amenity closure is what we want to do. And then if it is closed, support it so it can be used again or repurposed. So here we have a maximum of 5 points, 2 points for sanitation and health, 2 points for physical safety, and 1 point for urgency. So that is how that recommendation would collect those point values. Next, we have community priorities. So I want to share that the next 2 slides relate to the same criteria element, but I broke them out into 2 slides so we can see them all on one page, but it's not 3 points here and then 3 points here. They're all going to be within the 3-point category. And so these relate specifically to the Park and Recreation Community Questionnaire, as well as the statistically valid survey results. And we have two kind of realms of community priorities. The first realm of community priority is priority park improvements. And the second realm of community priority is priority park amenities or activities. So staff members trying to call me. And so I'll go through those, but I just want to note that there's kind of 2 realms of community priorities based on how we surveyed the community. So in terms of park improvements, we have identified these as the top community priorities as they relate to community improvements. These are combined fairly and very important, 65% or greater from the Park and Recreation Community Questionnaire. Improved cleanliness, 92% of survey respondents in this questionnaire listed this as fairly or very important. 92%, that's pretty huge. Improved cleanliness, including litter maintenance, refuse pickup, playground maintenance is an extreme importance for the community. Following that, we have addressing and or replacing outdated equipment. 89% of survey respondents found this fairly or very important. After that, we have addressing infrastructure maintenance. 87% of respondents to the community questionnaire found that fairly or very important. Then park amenities, having access to park amenities such as drinking fountains, shade structures, bike racks, all those kind of physical things that make a park usable. 80% of survey respondents found that fairly or very important. Following that, we have improved landscape maintenance, updated irrigation systems for efficient water use, improved lighting, more restrooms, and enhanced sports fields. And so we felt like if these reach that 65% or higher bracket, we really wanted to incorporate them into the community priorities for park improvements. Now moving on to the next area, the next realm is not just park improvements, but what activities are people wanting to do in your parks? At the very top, we have trails and pathways. People are really interested in pedestrian access. I did kind of state that as an earlier high-level community priority. But in the Park and Recreation Questionnaire, we're calling that the PRC, that is 91% of respondents said that that was very or fairly important, while in the Statistically Valid Survey, the SVS, 82% considered it extremely or very important. So our thresholds here are again 65% or greater for the PRC, but 50% or greater for the Statistically Valid Survey. Restrooms, 83%, community events, going to a local park, enjoying nature, 83%, community events, playgrounds, picnic areas, having access to picnic areas, nature and environmental programming, swimming pools, self-directed activities, cultural activities, reading, sports courts, fitness, self-help and wellness, walking and exercising a dog, or being able to walk and exercise a dog around a park. So these are all of the community priorities that we've collected, we've sifted through, we've compared the survey tools, we've looked at the community outreach input that we've gotten, and we feel pretty confident these are the identified priorities. Having so many of them, we are proposing to allocate 0.5, half a point per community priority area met, with a total of 3 points. So if a recommendation is able to improve cleanliness, if it provides an additional park amenity, all of these are going to add up to be a total of max 3.5 for each. Okay, so that was a big criteria element. The next one is the service area. So service area is also a 3-point max. And as I tried to mention earlier, it's broken into 3 categories. So we have the first category of frequently visited based on the Park and Recreation questionnaire and the Siskiyou Valley survey. We know that the most frequented spaces are Gerstle Park, Sun Valley, Terra Linda, Peacock Gap, Albert Park, Loch Lomond, and Pickleweed. Now, next to this, we also have allowable density, high density. This is especially important because the general plan allows density projected into the future. So this is our way to also try to capture potential population growth and locating recommendations in areas where we're gonna get the most bang for our buck. The most people are gonna be able to use this. So according to the General Plan 2040, we have high density, medium density, low density, and very low density. I would like to note that within the high density category, we also have the downtown mixed use. This was brought to us to be included in the at our steering committee meeting. I just want to reiterate that it is included here. And I will briefly show you a chart from the general plan that kind of shows where these are located. So on your screen, as this relates to us, we're looking at like the buttery yellow towards the chocolate brown, and those are kind of the density classifications that you can see. Then you can refer to this in the 2040 general plan. So it would be 3 points if this recommendation is in a high density area or it is a very high frequented site. 2 points if the recommendation will be located in a medium density area or kind of like a medium used, medium frequented site based on our analysis. 1 point for low density if it's located in a low density area or it's or not as frequently used site, and then 0 points for very low density and very low use. So I have listed here that these are kind of the most frequently visited spaces. As the general plan progresses, you will also see that in our surveying, a number of places were identified as really not being frequented very often compared to the other sites. And so having that differentiation is important to help us prioritize where the recommendations are going to help the most individuals. Okay, so now we're entering into the general plan 2040 guiding principles. So as I stated earlier, the general plan and being able to work with a general plan that is so new and so relevant has been really informative for this master plan process. And in the general plan, there are a variety of guiding principles that have kind of outlined the goals of the general plan. And these are 2 principles that we felt we could really connect our recommendations to. The first one being opportunity for all, meaning that this recommendation will serve a severely disadvantaged community per California State Parks Census designation. For the San Rafael community, this is the Canal neighborhood. And adapting to the future, meaning that this recommendation will support conservation, it'll support climate change adaptation, and it will potentially support disaster mitigation for flood, fire, or drought. So this would be a maximum of 2 points, 1 point per principle that it is in alignment with. Following this, we have accessibility, referring explicitly to the 2022 CASP assessment and the accessibility barriers that have been identified. As I tried to mention earlier, our CASP expert has been able to qualify barriers from high impact to low impact. High impact meaning that it is a barrier that prevents an individual from using the park. They can't even get into the facility in order to use it. Low impact being that they have access to the park, but there may be some minor challenges to use a facility, but they can, move there and generally experience what they're intending to experience. So we envision this as being 2 points for a recommendation that addresses or alleviates a high impact barrier, promoting accessibility, and 1 point for a recommendation that alleviates a medium or low impact barrier. And then finally, we're entering into our single point criteria of operational efficiency. We've worked extensively with the city's maintenance staff to understand what their challenges are, how they operate, and how their jobs can be supported in this master plan. And we've definitely identified that there is a potential to have recommendations that will lead to significant savings not only in staff time, but in city resources. So a recommendation that can create that better efficiency, we feel should earn at least 1 point in this prioritization matrix. And then finally, whether a recommendation has been previously stated. In these documents, which I mentioned earlier, the Santa Fe, these 5 documents, goals, policies, and recommendations have been explicitly outlined. Recommendations have been explicitly made, and we would like to support that planning work that's already occurred to add weight to this master plan process. So 1 point for recommendation that has been included in previous planning. Should maybe Catherine, you can decide if you want. We can answer questions about the prioritization criteria now, or I can speak to how these criteria were received at our latest kind of community meetings.
Let's do how they were received. I think the commissioners would be interested to know that before providing their feedback and yeah.
Okay, perfect. All right. So as I said, this September has been such a meeting month, month of meeting minds. And so on September 8th, we held our 3rd steering committee meeting. We went through all of these criteria, we brainstormed, we were trying to see if we missed anything, if anything should be further assessed. And this is the high level response that we received from the steering committee. We heard an appreciation for alignment with the general plan 2040. We heard that we should make sure that the downtown mixed use is included within our service area classifications, which it is. It's folded into high density residential. We heard not necessarily a concern, but an interest in making sure that prioritization continues to be based on San Rafael's specific community profile. Craig was able to verify in the steering community meeting that there is currently an ongoing recreation program assessment that's in process that is responsive to the community's demographics, making sure that they're providing recreation programs that are relevant to San Rafael. We also heard a concern / interest for getting that big picture lens. I do understand that while we're in the nitty gritty, we're still trying to figure out how things may relate to one another. We want to make sure that we're having those big picture components in our master plan, and I can absolutely guarantee that we will. We know that there are major gaps in some of the city's provision of services, specifically neighborhoods that don't have access to a public park. And so those big picture elements will be brought into the master plan as well. And then finally, we heard a strong interest in making sure that the city is considering partnerships beyond the city, beyond just, city staff, making sure that there are partnerships with local organizations, with neighboring communities, just making sure that the city isn't working, in its own bubble and is collaborative. At community meeting number 2, we had an excellent online turnout. We had nearly 30 people, 30 individuals. It was really exciting. We heard really good responses as well as individuals responded to these criteria. We heard a lot of appreciation for the criteria and the criterion selection process. Several community members responded that they felt that the methodology was logical. We did hear, and I think this does relate to kind of that unique component that Commissioner Gutierrez asked me earlier, what makes San Rafael unique. Just a request that the historic nature of the city sites is taken into consideration in this criteria, and also potentially an understanding that with these historic sites, if something was built 100 years ago, the intention of its use may be different than how it's used today. And so just kind of a general understanding or acknowledgement that these are unique and culturally unique to San Rafael. We heard an interest in making sure that expected population growth is explicitly included. We feel it is based on our service area criteria and the projections that are in the general plan. We heard an interest in making sure that not just accessibility, physical accessibility, but that inclusive experiences be included in this master plan. So accessibility, not just in terms of physical access, but in programmatic access and providing a range of opportunities for all. And then finally, again, we heard that interest in making sure that the city continued to collaborate beyond itself to unite in achieving these goals. So those are our, that's that. So we can go into questions and discussion if you guys have any comments. You can also ask me about specific documents if you still kind of want to understand how we got to where we are now.
All right, well, great presentation. Thank you so much. Any questions from the commissioners? It's feeling like a Thursday. Thursday at 6:48 p.m. Ariel.
I'll just say thank you. I agree with a lot of the feedback you guys already received from the community. I mean, you do this all the time, clearly, but it also feels like every time you do it, you must, you're adapting it specifically to where you're doing it. And you can tell. So thank you for all the hard work. And I'm obviously brand new to this process, but you guys aren't, and it shows. So just thank you.
Of course.
Yeah, and then
And Commissioner Machado had his
Mark,
hand raised.
yeah.
Yeah. So it seems like just so much, right? I mean, 100, three properties that are over 100 years old, and everything else is as old as me. So it's like, and things are just, not working. So I guess my question to you is, when you come across, when you do these things and the list is just huge, how realistic is it to be able to get it all together in a period of time where you finish one thing and you're not going back to fix it again, right? And so I guess that's my question. I mean, it just seems so daunting, right?
Right. I mean, that's an excellent question. And I encourage you guys to not be daunted. I mean, I'm even kind of experiencing this right now because half of my professional career, I work in building things, like actually building things that are going to be built in 2 years. The other half of my career, I spend in planning, which is extensive. It's a very long range. So I can totally understand how you're thinking, like, what is actionable? What's our turnaround? Well, firstly, let's remain positive. The city is a public entity that is obligated to continue to provide, the best service level it can possibly do. We do have an extensive list of deferred maintenance. We do have an extensive list of repairs that need to be made. But rather than getting bogged down in repairing all of those, we want to, because it's a list that the city has that is being folded into their current maintenance practices. It's information that they will have for now until the end of posterity. We want to generate recommendations that are also alleviating some of the recreation stresses. And that's where it's kind of getting exciting to see where can a new playground be installed? Where can we create more space for soccer fields and recreation activities? And Commissioner Machado, I also appreciate bringing that up because that's kind of actually entering into our next step of the master plan. Is we'll have this really big list of things to do or things that can be done. And we're going to go through these prioritization matrices to compare it and see, like, okay, if we do this one recommendation, we are not only serving so many people, we're in alignment with what the community wants to see. And those kind of start to get pushed towards the top. And then what we actually had our first financial planning meeting this week with our financial planners, EPS on Monday, actually. We're starting that process of identifying costs, identifying financial resources within the city and beyond the city, And kind of our goal is to create a timeline of like, these are the main projects, these are the main recommendations that we know that the city should do. We're going to start unfolding a blueprint of, okay, these are the financial resources that the city has now. This is what we know they can expect to have in 10, 15 years, potentially even beyond then, and kind of like create like a list of like, okay, this is what we can achieve by 2023. This is what we can achieve by 2025. This is what we can, you know, so on and so forth. And so it's really important to not get too bogged down into the tiny details, because it's endless. And you're completely right. Everything has a shelf life. So even the recommendations that we're gonna put forth are gonna be required to be checked in on in a decade or so. They also come with maintenance implications. So I don't know, does that answer your question? Did I?
Yeah, no, you answered it as best you could. I was just curious, because it is, I mean, it's a long list. Thank you so much.
And I mean, I think there is gonna be like a pretty lengthy list of items that are gonna take financial resources, you know, playground replacements, court repairs, pathway repairs. But then there are also opportunities for us to kind of find creative ways to fund needs, which is one thing that is actually kind of ties into the second item on your agenda that Craig's going to be talking about, in terms of, you know, we just have benches and picnic tables that need to be replaced. We also have people that approach us wanting to donate benches. So, you know, kind of finding those creative opportunities. And then there's also going to be recommendations that will take staff time and frankly this commission's time to kind of dig into around like dogs and issues around, you know, we've talked about establishing a pilot off-leash dog program that definitely has come up, the need for spaces for dogs, and we're not going to be able to build a new dog park. So how do we look for more kind of program policy level solutions to identify some of those challenges? So we're kind of almost seeing like a 3-pronged pathway of like, these are going to take, this is where our Measure A work plan is set, set with these certain items for the coming years. But then there's also, you know, smaller projects that maybe we could fit with the little excess Measure A funding or other small funding sources. And then there's a thing that is going to take more of our staff and time. So it's a daunting list for sure. And we definitely had the conversations of, you know, some of these are they ever really going to get to the point where we have the money to do them? And you know, we just have to think as
I do want to also absolutely. I do want to also add that this master planning process is also creating a framework that the city will be able to use moving forward, which has been critical, because prior to this master plan, there really was no inherent structure with which projects got put in, projects were assessed of when they would need to be put in, how do you prioritize other projects? So yes, there will be, you know, physical and financial implications for recommendations, but there's also the fact that we've now kind of created a strategy for the city to move forward as new projects come into an alignment. And, you know, demographics may change, community may evolve in different ways, but you will always have this process to kind of look at, to kind of create a framework so that recommendations are put in equitably, efficiently, timely, and efficiently. Yeah. And honestly, sometimes every time I've worked in it with a city that's never had a park and recreation master plan before, that list comes out, because if the city's never had a park and recreation master plan, it totally makes sense that there would be a whole list of items, because they haven't been vetted before. They haven't been collected into one space before. So it's part of the fun of planning.
Also, what I think is that to-do list was always there, right? Like it was always there. But what you were just saying, Lauren, about this provides that framework, but also gives you the I think the sort of the low hanging fruit, right? So that you can go in and do the most effective parts that get you the biggest bang for the buck, and use the money that we have in the best way possible. And I really appreciate seeing all the prioritization that you're doing here. And I'm remembering the plans that I saw for other cities, and I'm very excited to see this. This is going to be great. I'm really happy how it's going. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Commissioner Morales.
Great. Any other questions or comments from the commission? Okay, I'm going to go ahead and check back with our agenda. I think that at this point we would be asking for a public comment.
Yes, Chair, we do not have anyone in the audience at this time.
Okay, great. All right, so move on to agenda item 4, the sponsorship of minor park amenities draft policy. So let's
Oh,
go
wait.
ahead and wait.
There's a tiny bit left more of our presentation.
Oh, sorry. I didn't know that. I'm sorry.
Well,
I'm
I'm glad that you trusted us. What was presented. Well,
Oh,
very
next
quick-
steps. Got it.
Yeah, very quickly, I just wanted to kind of present what's coming up, even though I feel like it's heavily been implied in this conversation, is that developing those specific master plan recommendations, applying a cost to them, and then creating a financial strategy. And so this week we actually did our kickoff meeting with our financial consultant and the city. So we're hoping to get some costs grounded in by the end of this month. And then once those kind of shake out, we'll also further see how they compare. And then I think after this, the next meeting is our next park and is our city council meeting, right, Catherine?
We're gonna have a Park and Recreation Commission meeting and then a city council meeting. So
Got it.
I believe that's when we'll kind of have the list of prioritized recommendations ready to share.
So
Awesome.
we'll review the final, and then it'll go to the city council.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, well then it sounds like but RJA is done for the evening, or do you have any other things for us? Okay. Well, thank you very much, and feel free to email me or Catherine, and we communicate all the time. So any questions?
Thank you.
I also actually have to run. There's a library foundation, their annual meeting is tonight. So I stayed for here, but I told them I'd run over there late, but you all are in good hands with Craig. So I will also be hopping off, and we'll see you all soon.
See
Thank
ya.
you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks,
Thank you
Lauren.
very
Thanks,
much.
Barbara.
Thank you.
See you, Catherine.
Okay. Chair Emerson, are we ready to move on to number 4 here?
Yeah, I think we definitely are. So our next agenda item is, again, sponsorship of minor park amenities draft policy. So has everyone had a chance to look at it? The park. Craig, do you want to walk us through it? Just give us the high level of
I will. Yeah, I have just a really, I'm going to try to keep this very brief.
Okay.
Everyone see my screen here?
Yep.
Okay, so we shared with you a staff report and a draft policy. I think as Catherine mentioned, you know, we have, in my time here, I've been with the city for just shy of 4 months, and we've already received more than half a dozen requests from the public to donate minor park amenities or sponsor minor park amenities. So there's clearly demand in the community right now and interest in a program. So I'm going to just take a couple minutes to walk you through where we're at and where we hope to go with this draft policy. You know, the city manages a wide array of minor park amenities, the benches, tables, trees, bicycle racks, drinking fountains. There's a wide variety of those throughout our entire system. Typically, they have a short lifespan. and we have limited funds available to replace those amenities system-wide. Like I mentioned, we routinely receive requests to sponsor the purchase of amenities. There is an existing policy that the city adopted in 1993. It's called the Donation of Park Trees and Bench Guidelines Policy. We've realized that that policy is outdated. It includes inaccurate expenses. It doesn't reflect the current needs of the city. And our goal is to develop a more robust program that really better represents where we're currently at, what the expenses would be associated with installation of, for say, a commemorative bench or a picnic table, and then what would that agreement look like to make sure that that's clear for the community. So the goals for this would be to update the existing policy to reflect our current needs, find that framework a little better, establish what those fees would look like, hopefully encourage the community to sponsor amenities. And like Catherine mentioned earlier, we want to create a system that will help us repair or replace aging minor park amenities throughout the system. And we think this might help contribute towards that. So that application, what this would look like is there would be a policy that would then support the city in the development of an application to administer the program. We would take that application and revise it routinely to try to accurately reflect, changes in expenses and costs, different types of amenities that the city needed at that point in time, and installation schedules working with the Department of Public Works. Applicants would be able to choose which amenity they were interested in, have the opportunity to install a commemorative plaque with some guidelines and framework for that, and hopefully identify their preferred park that they would like to see that amenity placed in. And then we would review and approve the applications. Library and Recreation Department. The Department of Public Works would be responsible for purchasing, installing, and maintaining the amenities. Again, we revise that periodically to reflect accurate program information. And initially, what we are looking at is placing emphasis on the amenities of park benches and picnic tables. I think the city does have an interest in other sponsorship opportunities in the future, but right now we think to get this program started, we have the bandwidth and capabilities to really focus on those park benches and picnic tables, and we think that's where the strongest need is. But we do know there may be interest in the future in exploring opportunities to sponsor trees, to sponsor other amenities. So we would like to start first, though, with something that we think we can really manage effectively from the get-go. So the request tonight, the recommended action is that the commission review this draft policy. And there's a couple options that you could choose to take this evening. One of the things we're trying to do is get into a rhythm where anytime we have a policy like this or something that we would like to take action on, we'd like to get it in front of you for review prior to taking additional steps. We think that's a really important part of the process here, that the commission has a chance to review it, to see it, and to give us feedback and comments, so that we can then take that and apply it to any final drafts that we would be either bringing back to you for approval or taking to our city council for final approval. So I think that's one of the things I wanted to just share with you, that we're hoping that this can be an example for maybe some future policy decisions that we make within our department. So again, we're just asking you to review this draft right now, but if you felt like you were ready to approve this and move it forward to city council or make comments and then move it forward to city council, there could be a motion to, approve, accept it with comment or as it is. So give you a couple of alternative actions here to consider as well. But on that, I'm going to go ahead and open it up for questions to see if there are any, or if there's anything I can answer.
Any questions from the commission? I think it looks good. I think it makes sense. It's logical and a good step in the policy direction. Ariel?
I did read it earlier today and I already forget what is, it's been a long day. What are the plans, like if a bench, is there a timeline, like the bench falls into disrepair, do you call that person first and say, do you want to sponsor the new one? Or we have this at my work, benches fall into disrepair, we're like, does someone else want to sponsor it? Is that in there? I forgot.
Yeah, that's a good question. And right now, the way the policy is drafted, we're attaching a 10-year lifespan to that amenity, or there could be other factors outside of our control, like vandalism, weather. Some things could happen that could make that a shorter term for that lifespan for the amenity. What we're hoping to do is just make it really clear that we're going to maintain it to the best of our capabilities, but if this bench falls into disrepair, we're not responsible for replacing it or repairing it. Things happen, and so we want to make that clear to anyone that does sponsor an amenity, but we'll always do the best we can to maintain it for a reasonable service life of the amenity. Now, at the end of that term, if someone sponsored it and they want to kind of re-up their sponsorship, they could reapply and do that. If their term were to come to an end, and for whatever reason, if it happens, shorter than 10 years or at that 10-year mark where that amenity was no longer serviceable, we would do our best to return that commemorative plaque to them, as long as we can reach out to them.
Thank you. It looks good.
Okay, any other questions or comments for Craig?
I'm sorry if I've missed this. I was just reviewing it again to see how much are they? Like, let's say I want a bench. How do I know how much I need to get a bench?
Yeah, what we're hoping to do is within the application section, there's two kind of components to what we're proposing. One is the policy that would help regulate how we administer the program. And then the second part would be the application itself. And that would be something that would help us guide how we establish those fees. We would be looking at those in talking with our Department of Public Works on a routine basis to take a look at how much does that equipment cost, and then what would be the fully burdened cost for us to install that amenity. How much do we think it would cost us to maintain that amenity over that period of 10 years? And then what would that total cost be? That would be the cost of each one of those amenities. We've thrown in some examples into the application I shared with you that show several different types of bench, and each one of the benches, picnic tables, different amenities that we might include in that program. Each one of those might have a slightly different cost associated with them. So for an example, a bench that we can simply bolt down to the ground is likely going to take less time to install than something that requires us to pour in place concrete and wait for that to cure and make sure we have the supplies and equipment to pour that concrete. So I worked with our Public Works department to get an idea of what some of those costs might be. And we have an idea of that right now, but we want to make sure we fine tune that before we were to publish that application. Generally speaking, I think you're probably, well, how much is it? It's, I think we're talking between, for some amenities, maybe $1,500 to $2,000. For some, it might be closer to $3,000, $3,500, somewhere in that range. But we're still trying to determine, well, what are the best amenities to be part of this program? And are those reasonable costs to expect as part of this? So I'm going to continue to work with Public Works on that, and hopefully have a couple of different options that we think are reasonable for the public.
Hey, so Craig, does the donor get to choose? I want it in Sun Valley Park, or I want it in Gerstle Park, or I want it, or does the city just say, okay, you want to donate, then this is where it's going to go?
Yeah, good question. I think we know that there are certain parks that need amenities more than others. So I think with the way we wrote the policy, it would give us the opportunity on a routine basis to kind of channel those sponsorship requests towards the parks that we think need it the most. But we also know that community members, there's probably a reason why they want to commemorate a group or an event or someone in their life, and maybe there's special meaning and significance to a particular park. So I think first we want to give them the option to let us know what their preferred park or parks would be. So the application would include a process where they can list, park choice number 1, number 2, number 3. We're then going to go back and take a look at what amenities we have there. And we're going to prioritize replacement or repair of existing amenity placement. So if there's already a bench in place that needs to be repaired in Gerstle Park, for example, and someone has a sponsorship request there, that would likely be the bench that we would replace. We're going to prioritize that over placement of a brand new amenity in a location where no amenities had previously existed. So yeah, we're hoping to find a balance there where, you know, community members can say, this is where I want it to go, but it also meets community needs and is in alignment with the planning process that we're going through right now.
Got it. So maybe the more popular parks would be more expensive. I don't know.
Yeah, I think we would be looking at
I was kidding.
The reasonable cost for each amenity, which shouldn't change too much park to park.
Yeah, no, I was just kidding. I was being a smart ass, sorry.
As you guys don't have a sense of like what the volume is gonna really be in terms of this.
Well, I think given the response we've gotten so far from the community, you know, we've got about 5 or 6 requests that of interest right now. I'm anticipating maybe 6 to 10 on an annual basis, but I just don't know if that's sustainable. You know, if that's going to be every year, or if that's maybe just a surge of demand since we don't really have an established program right now, and then that will taper off. But I also think if we start to promote this program and get it out there to the community, that could inspire more interest, and we'll see. So I think it's an estimate right now, but we don't really have a lot of metrics to base on.
I just had a vision of the parks like just filled with benches.
Well, that's not a bad thing. Benches are good. People want improved infrastructure. Okay, well, I think it looks good. I think we need a motion to approve the draft policy.
I
I'll
still
move to approve. Oh,
Go ahead.
I'll move to approve the draft policy.
I'll second.
Can we have a vote? Oh, wait, there's no public. Okay, vote please.
Yes, Commissioner Cabrales,
Yes.
Chair Emerson,
Yes.
Commissioner Gutierrez,
Yes.
Commissioner Machado,
Yes.
and Commissioner Sandoval.
Yes.
All right, motion approved. Thank you.
All right, so we're on to agenda item number 5, which is commission reports and comments. Does anybody have anything that they want to report out about any meetings, conferences, or seminars attended by you all in the last few weeks?
I just want to say thank you to staff for the movie nights. I actually did not make it. We had something, but the one at Sun Valley Park was great. All of my neighbors were thrilled, and I think it's curious how the rest of the program went, and maybe that's in staff comments, but just wanted to give kudos to the department for those events.
Anything else? Okay, I know we're fast coming up on like the fall machine of events and conferences, and events. Coleman School has moved their carnival to October 1st to not compete with the Heads Up Carnival and this whatever. I'm not quite sure what's going on, but anyway, so there's that going on. I know there's events of interest. Is there still the downtown trick or treat? Is that happening? Craig, do you know about that?
I believe that is happening. Is that the business improvement district?
Yeah.
that sponsors that? Yep, I believe that is. Let me see if I can find the date on that.
I also think Santa Fe High is going to introduce its homecoming parade that had been put off for a while. Unfortunately, it is not going to be in the old route because they will not allow anybody to ever cross the SMART train tracks. So if you want to see the parade, it will be starting in Dominican and going in a different route, but that should be back in action soon too.
So no parades can cross the tracks? Is that what we're
Apparently
hearing?
not, yeah.
Well, and there's no workarounds, I guess. 'Cause
They have put their very best people towards trying to make that happen, and it is severely blocked.
Okay.
Well, so that doesn't come downtown at all?
No, they can never go downtown ever again, apparently.
Oh,
Unless they
that's
started
part about it,
downtown.
sitting
They could-
outside and-
They could start downtown and not, they could start on that side of the tracks, which would not be at Centerville High, but
Yeah,
that's the
they would not get
alternative.
back- They would not get back to, the school. Huh.
Right. Well,
Yeah.
that is unfortunate,
Yeah.
for sure.
But a parade will happen, so.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I know the Porch Fest is coming up. I've never attended that event, and of course, yeah, I'm going out of town. I think there's supposed to be rain on Sunday too, which is good, but unfortunate for the Porch Fest. But how hard will it rain really here in Marin?
I heard it was supposed to be later. Maybe that's changed, but.
Okay. Yeah, and so I think we'll close this and go to the next, which is the staff report. Craig, do you have anything?
Yeah, I've got a couple things here. So yeah, just to kind of continue on with scheduled events. This Saturday is it's a California Coastal Cleanup Day. So Sandersville Coastal Cleanup is happening on the 17th. You mentioned Porch Fest. Monday, the 19th, we have city council meeting, and our Measure A work plan was continued from the 9/6 meeting to that date. They had to continue quite a bit of city business due to public comment. The movies in the park you mentioned, September 23rd, next Friday, is our next movie in that series. That's going to be down at Pickleweed Park. The movie is Encanto in Spanish. And prior to that movie, the city is actually sponsoring some tables along with the Voices del Canal. There's going to be games, there's going to be a fire truck, there's going to be several city departments down there. I think they're going to have popcorn and they're going to have snow cones, all kinds of stuff before the movie. We're also going to be sharing our plans for Pickleweed Park Improvement Project with the community and getting some feedback from them on some maybe new program ideas that they want down there in the park. So that's kind of a unique thing that just materialized organically that wasn't part of the rest of our movies in the park series, but we're really excited to see how that goes down there. I think the next movie in the park is October 7th. And that's going to be at Terra Linda Park, and that's Hotel Transylvania. So I had a couple other things I just wanted to bring to your attention here. One is a personnel update. In August, we welcomed Darcy Chalou as our newest recreation supervisor. Darcy was promoted. We're really excited to have her in this role, in this career appointment permanently. She was acting in this role since June when we had a vacancy. We have a really strong group of candidates for that, and she popped up to the top. So we're really excited to promote her into that role. She was most recently the coordinator responsible for Falkirk Cultural Center and our community gardens, and now she's going to be at San Rafael Community Center. In addition, we just recommended 2 applicants to fill vacancies for our program coordinator classification. One of those is the backfill for Darcy's position, and the other will run programming at San Rafael Community Center. Childcare programs are off to a great start this season. The school year has begun. Our youth enrichment programs are also proving to be really popular. Registration started for those programs earlier in the summer, and they're off to a really strong start. We've also continued to run our aquatics programs, pool, Terra Linda Pool. And one of the things that I wanted to share with you is that we're considering extending pool operations through the fall season. Typically, our pool closes sometime in mid-September, and we're considering extending that through the fall on a limited programming basis. So we are planning to get a city council report together for the October 3rd city council meeting to hopefully they will approve some new fees for drop-in swim for the fall season. It costs us a little more to operate the pool during the shoulder season, and we've heard some really strong support from the swim community that they want to swim in the fall. They want to see us operate the pool for a longer season, and they're willing to pay a little more to make that happen. So we're going to be recommending a slight fee increase to help us capture some of those costs. And that's going to go to city council on hopefully October 3rd. And then we're planning to operate the pool through at least October 30th this season. And then we're going to reassess at that point based on demand, weather, available staffing, whether we can continue to operate the pool any longer into the season. So that's definitely something I wanted to bring to your attention. One other kind of, this is a celebratory announcement. We shared, I think, in a recent meeting that the city's been recommended for award of a $4.24 million Land and Water Conservation Fund federal grant for the Pickleweed Field Conversion Project. There's some additional funding that the library is going to receive. There's a new grant that they've been recommended for award on. It's the California State Library Building Forward Grant. And that grant is going to fund $1 million of infrastructure and life safety work at Carnegie, the downtown branch. It's also going to fund $1 million for the Pickleweed Library. And that money is going to be utilized for interior layout to hopefully help expand staff and patron space and maybe reconfigure the police substation down there. So we're really excited that they were able to get that funding. And we think that's going to help continue to build the Pickleweed Library programs down there. So anytime we get dollar amounts in the millions, I always get excited. So it's fun. And then the last thing I wanted to share is down at Falkirk, we have a current exhibit down there through September 23rd. It's Art to Amuse and Delight. And then our next exhibit is going to open on October 14th. It's the California Watercolor Show. And one of the unique things that's happening on October 14th is the downtown San Rafael Arts District, which was formed in 2017. We were recently notified that that district is going to receive some new state funding from the California Arts Commission. And the city of San Rafael is a partner as part of that district. We partnered with a few other organizations that are downtown, Artworks Downtown, the Downtown San Rafael Business Improvement District, the California Film Institute in Youth and Arts are all partners in this. And we recently learned that because of this new funding, the state is planning some legislative tours, and they intend to come to the city of San Rafael on the evening of October 14th and do a tour of some of the district. So we're in the planning stages right now with some of the staff and the consultants of the legislature to plan that stage of the tour. Right now, it sounds like it's going to be between 5:30 and 7:30 on the 14th, which coincides with a lot of really cool stuff happening downtown. It's the Friday Art Walk. The California Film Institute has the Mill Valley Film Festival going on. It's our opening reception for the California Watercolor Show. There's a few other opening art receptions that night. So we're really excited to show off San Rafael, share some of our needs with the state legislature, share with them where this district is at, and hopefully, receive some funding for that district very soon. In July, the California Arts Council issued a press release saying that there's funding of around $30 million of one-time general fund monies that's intended to be spent over 3 years to expand and support these districts. And really the goal here is to focus on the geographic and racial diversity of the state. They want to expand and support the state's districts. And there's a real focus on equity and economic development here. There's 14 districts in the state. We don't know how much funding we're going to receive. We're still trying to work through some of those details. The state doesn't even quite know yet how much funding each district might receive and how that will be allocated. But we're really excited about that, and we'll definitely keep this group in the loop. I'm working really closely with one of my colleagues, Victoria, in economic development to really help us be part of that process and see what we can do to support that. So that is it on my end. Sorry, I had a lot to share here. So I know it's late in the day, but I felt like a lot of those were really important ones to pass along to all of you.
No, thank you, Craig.
Sorry.
No, go ahead.
So when you were mentioning the pool raising the rate, is that just for fall, or would that be a rate for all of the year for next year?
Just for the fall, we're treating this as a pilot program. We really want to see what our true actual costs will be, what are those expenses, verify that we have solid staffing during this season. And we would be treating this as a pilot program for just the fall season. So our typical summer season runs Memorial Day to Labor Day. Those fees would stay as they are. we would be recommending adoption of these new fees just for this period of time. And then if we wanted to adopt those on a more permanent basis, we'd be taking that back to council in a slightly different way to be included as part of our master fee schedule.
Just as long as the heater holds out.
Exactly. Yeah.
Well, thank you for the report. Pickleweed will do its Day of the Dead.
They will. Yeah.
Okay.
That's, I believe, October.
It wasn't on the list, but I'm assuming it's going on
Yeah, I think
in a more, in
person?
person style.
I think we didn't include that one because we have another meeting prior to that. But the procession, the car procession is October 22nd. And the altar displays downtown, I think, are November 5th. Those are the dates for the Dia de los Muertos. And then the trick or treat on 4th Street, and it's trick or treat and a pet costume contest. That is
Ooh,
October.
I'm up for
29th.
that. When is it? I'm sorry.
October 29th. So, yeah.
What kind of contest was that?
Pet costumes.
Oh, pet. Oh, okay.
Hey, it sounds a little hectic, but might be fun. All right. All right. I think we're done, right? I gotta I'm sorry, I only have one screen, so I have to flip around to try to stay connected here to the agenda. Yeah, I think that's it. Any next steps, any future agenda items that we need to discuss? I don't think so. I think we'll go ahead and adjourn the meeting and meet again on October 20th. Sound right?
That
All
looks
right, good to
correct.
see everyone. Have a good night. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thanks,
staff.
Sarah.